Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, oh dear, it's Bruckner. Yeah, this horror show. Ta-da! Symphony number 4. Actually, it doesn't even say which symphony it is on the front. Isn't that interesting? It is Symphony number 4, the romantic in the usual version with the hunting scherzo and that stuff. With Anima, Eterna, Brugge, the period instrument group conducted by Pablo Heras-Casado with an incompetence and ignorance of Bruckner's style that earns this recording. Yes, the white scarf of irredeemable Chutzpah. Whoa! And it took a lot of work to get there. Yes, it does. This is a horrible, awful, terrible, incompetent, stupid performance played by an orchestra which is absolutely outclassed by the music. They just can't do it. It's horrendous. I mean, a second-rate ensemble, which is hiding its second-ratedness by claiming that they're historically authentic. Now, what gives this particular performance the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah? Well, we'll get there in a second. The bottom line, and we'll talk about the details in a second, but the bottom line is that we know what Bruckner sounded like in the 1860s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. We do. It's been described. It's the sound of the Vienna Philharmonic because he was in Vienna, and that was the orchestra. And that orchestra has been studied and discussed and reported on. For example, let me give you an example because you think I'm just BSing you here. The music critic and writer Richard Specht, who lived from 1870 to 1932. In 1919, he wrote a history of the Vienna Philharmonic. From 1869 to 1919, 50-year period, when you-know-who, Mr. Bruckner, was having his works performed there. He writes, excuse me, in his book, by the way, it's called Das Wiener Operntheater von Dingelstedt bis Schock, you know Schock and Bruckner, Schock, und Strauss, Erinnerung aus 50 Jahren, 50 Jahren. Okay, so you've got it. The Vienna Opera Theater from Dingelstedt, the conductor, to Schock and Strauss. Schock was the Bruckner Schock, that Schock. Memories of 50 Years, which was published in Vienna in 1919. He writes, of the musicians of the 1870s, there might be scarcely one left. Of those from Richter's time, only a vanishing few remain. Remember, these are performers in the Vienna Phil who were there then, right? The conductors are different, but for the past 50 years, the orchestra, its characteristics, its singular finish and sonority have invariably remained the same. Today, there are acknowledged orchestras of the same rank, but none of the same kind. There is something inimitable in the vibrato and the passionate virtuosity of the violins, in the bloom of the cello cantilena, the power of the basses. Well, yes, exactly. And that's what they sound like. Does this sound like that? Do you hear bloom in the cantilena of the cellos? Do you hear the passionate virtuosity and vibrato in the violins? Hell no. We're not even close. It's a freaking joke. And to make it even more cogent, so that we really know that we know what we're talking about, there is Bruno Walter. Bruno Walter, who is a pretty good witness to these things, and he gave a radio interview on his return to Vienna after the war, and he's talking in 1961, which is when the orchestra, which is when he gave the interview. So we're talking about 1961, what the Vienna Phil sounds like in 1961, which we know because we've got crapload of records, the Vienna Philharmonic from 1961. But here we are. I saw Vienna for the first time in 1897, he writes. I had an engagement there in the small municipal theater in Bratislava. An engagement then, pardon me. I came from Breslau, went to Bratislava because I wanted to be in charge. They were the most paltry terms, but I felt that there, where I said I would, pardon me, would be as first conductor. Bratislava was 1.5 hours from Vienna at that time. I went by boat down the Danube to Bratislava, but when I was in Vienna, I finally heard the Philharmonic for the first time in 1897. For me, this was a life-altering impression because it was this sound of the orchestra that I have experienced ever since. I have the feeling this is the way an orchestra should sound, the way it should play. I had never heard the beauty, this calmness of the sound, that sort of glissando, the manner of vibrato, the string sound, the blend of woodwinds with the strings, with the brass, the balance of the brass in combination with the percussion contributing together to the overall sonority of the orchestra. For me, this impression was definitive. And now I would like to anticipate a point and tell you this sound, 1897, is the same today. 1961. There is not a single man left from that time, as you can imagine. In the early 50s, after that terrible period, I was in America, and I met up with the Vienna Philharmonic in Edinburgh to take part in the festival. And it was a touching reunion to play with them after such a long separation. And when they began to play, it was the same sound. And even now, when I made music with them and began rehearsing Schubert, it was the same sound that had given me such delight in 1897. So there you have it. We know. So all this historical bullshit, crap, nonsense, foolishness, it's all just well, it's ignorance. It's foolishness. It's anti-musical. I mean, ridiculous. Anyway, so there you have it. We know what they're supposed to sound like. Do they? Heck no. First of all, the opening of the Romantic Symphony is one of the most beautiful and atmospheric, openings in all of music, with the soft horn calls and the mysterious string tremolos. This performance never gets below mezzo forte for anybody, especially the brass. It's absolutely awful. Instead of having that ya-da, ba-ba, off in the distance, you have ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Nothing. No atmosphere, nothing at all. It's disgraceful. And that really characterizes the whole performance, a complete lack of feeling for the spirit of the music as embodied in the timbres that Bruckner chooses. I mean, we're not talking about some metaphysical spirit. We're talking about dynamics. We're talking about playing the music with the proper dynamics. So that's just awful. The phrasing and tension is so badly distributed in this performance. I mean, Heras-Casado doesn't seem to have any particular feeling for Bruckner. I mean, there's no reason he should be playing it. He doesn't seem to care. The Adagio, well, it's not an Adagio, it's an Andante quasi allegretto. Remember the bloom of the cello cantilena? Holy crap, they sound like they're screwing in rivets on a construction site. It's the most awful string sound you've ever heard in your life. And the second subject of this slow movement, remember, it's just a series of long phrases in the violas accompanied by string pizzicati. It's a very gaunt, austere sound. And in order to make it work, it has to have its own kind of beauty and tenderness and gravity. And, oh gosh, this is just unlistenable. It's absolutely horrible. In the scherzo, you would think that because you have period instruments, you have clarity. That's what they all talk about. Lightness, clarity. Well, lightness is not exactly a quality one associates with Bruckner all the time, is it? I mean, it's not supposed to be like, ha, 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 light. It's heavy-duty music. But when the climaxes build, you have the same problems you have in the worst regular performances. That is, the string tremolos drown out everybody. The brass timbres coagulate. And all you get is this dense, clogged up, congested... Oh gosh, it's awful. The big climaxes, when it's going da 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 da, you've got the trombones are going bam 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 bam, and the horns and trumpets going da 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 da, and the trumpets build up with their arpeggio thing, and then forget it. It's weak-kneed and miserable. And then, the finale, that long finale, has all the same problems that the rest of the thing has. It's just lumpish. It's lumpishly phrased. It has awful string timbres. The brass are unequalized. The woodwinds are well forward in the mix because they never play below mezzo forte. That's all you hear. In other words, it's disgraceful. It's an amateur act. That's what it is. An amateur act based on ignorance of the scholarly reality and the inability, the historical reality, as demonstrated by some pretty basic scholarship, right? I did the research. You'd find it rather easily. And I didn't have to go to Vienna. We know what this music should sound like. So what is this? What is it? Historical, authentic? What are they talking about? What kind of crap are they selling? It's just bullshit, and it's musically unconscionable, and hence richly merits the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, but don't listen to this piece of garbage. There it goes. Okay. See you later.